When I was growing up, I was very impressionable about the things that came on TV. Power Rangers, Dexter's Laboratory, Batman the Animated Series. All these shows were action-oriented affairs targeted towards children. In the late 90s and early 2000s, I started to get a taste of anime because of Toonami, and one of their flagship shows was Dragon Ball Z. This was unlike anything I've seen before, and it captured my imagination in a major way. For those of you who don't know, there's an anime/manga series called Dragon Ball, penned by the late and great Akira Toriyama, who before then got his start with Dr. Slump. It began as a gag manga inspired by Journey to the West, but it eventually evolved into a serialized epic that's still revered to this day. It follows the adventures of Son Goku, who trains to be the strongest fighter ever. Most of the journeys revolve around hunting for mystical artifacts known as the Dragon Balls. 7 orbs that summon a wish-granting dragon when they're all gathered. Many conflicts stem from them searching for these things, and many friends and rivals are made along the way amidst some wacky scenarios. Dragon Ball was split into 2 series for its anime run, with the first few major story arcs known simply as Dragon Ball, and the latter half would be known as Dragon Ball Z. This would be the more well-known part of the series, as it focused more on over-the-top action and drama than the material before it. Dragon Ball Z was one of the de facto anime series from the 90s, next to the Sailor Moon and Gundam Wing, and a lot of shows and games find inspiration from it to this very day. I remember watching the show on Toonami a lot as a kid, and it kickstarted my love for the series that persists today. But even though Dragon Ball had been around since the 80s, you didn't get a lot of games under its name until Z was brought into American television in the mid-90s with the Ocean Studios dub. Some odd ducks popped up here and there, like Final Bout and Dragon Power on the NES. But the first Dragon Ball game I ever played known as a kid was Dragon Ball Z Budokai for the PlayStation 2. It was released on Nintendo GameCube a year later, but I never played that version. It was developed by Dimps, who would later make the Sonic Rush games, as well as co-develop Street Fighter 4 and 5. This is a big deal for me, as I could reenact the super hype battles from the show in a video game. Me and my friends would play multiplayer matches all the time, and even went through the story mode that mostly followed the events of the anime. It was incredibly fun back in 2002, but does it still hold up over 20 years later? Let's check it out. The story mode covers a good chunk of Dragon Ball Z's story arc, starting with the confrontation with Raditz to the end of the Cell games, which is fitting because the Buu saga was just starting to air at this game's release. I won't go over a story synopsis for any of these Dragon Ball games, as they're mostly one-to-one with the anime and manga. With that said, however, most of the story beats aren't really explored much in this game. It's mostly about the major fights that happen around them. When you start off for the first time, it only follows the perspective of Goku and Gohan. Then when you beat Cell, you unlock the stuff in between with Piccolo and Vegeta. It feels disjointed and hard to follow in the initial playthrough, but revisiting it makes it flow a bit better. There are also 3 what-if scenarios to play through with every other part of the story is done, and these range from meh to kinda funny. Why does Cell transform into a tiny version of himself when he absorbs Krillin? Doesn't he do the same to other humans and they just become liquid jelly for him? Still, it is pretty funny because I can make memes out of the last scene.
You're not perfect.
It is cool that they have the in-game models reenacting key scenes from the show, which looked awesome back then, but they have not aged gracefully over time. The art style for Budokai is this weird 3D clay look that wants to emulate the manga aesthetic of the signature look of Dragon Ball, but it looks incredibly uncanny at points. Most of the faces don't look right, and all the character models share a similar base with each other. Look at Vegeta here, this fucker's white as hell. The voice cast from the original Funimation dub reprises the roles for this game, and they all sound like I remember. The only weird one is having Imperfect Cell's goofy voice coming out of Perfect Cell's mouth. The music was composed by Kenji Yamamoto, and while it does have a catchy rock and techno aesthetic, it sounds eerily similar to other songs. Like this one in the cutscenes, I thought sounded vaguely familiar until my dad pointed out, it's Black Sabbath's Iron Man.
Hey everybody! This guy's a great big phony!
I do like the soundtrack, but I feel guilty because it's mostly stolen. By the time the HD version of this game and Budokai 3 came out on 360 and PS3, Yamamoto had been fired from doing Dragon Ball soundtracks, and the score was replaced by music from other games. But that's a story for another time. The overall presentation is mixed for me, but what about the gameplay? Dragon Ball Z Budokai is a one-on-one fighting game where you select from one of 23 characters in best-of-1 matches. You string punches and kicks with the square and triangle buttons respectively. with circle firing a single ki blast and X letting you block attacks. You can charge up unblockable single strikes by holding down both attack buttons, and having two of these colliding initiates a power struggle. Visually, it looks like the rapid punch-kick combos from the show, but playing it feels awkward at first since you have to guess when they're going to use that specific attack to initiate it. You can also sidestep on the Z-axis to avoid attacks by pressing X plus up or down, and pressing back twice while holding X lets you charge your ki meter. Oh boy, here comes the dumbest part of the game for me. Okay, so there are special moves in Cinematic Supers that you can perform that range from beam attacks from the show to multi-hitting combo attacks that may as well be a command throw. You perform these moves by pressing a specific sequence of button presses ending with the circle button when you have the appropriate amount of meter. Like, that's all well and good, but here's the thing about special moves in this game. These are all equipment you fasten your character with to even use them. Oh, you thought the moves are a natural part of your arsenal? Nah, that's just ridiculous. You're going to be spending a lot of time in this customization menu equipping and buying capsules containing the skills you want for your personal builds. You unlock capsules by playing through the story mode and buying them from Mr. Popo's shop. His inventory is divided among the 3 capsule types as well as a random recommended skill, and his stock is always completely random. This means you'll be backing out and going back into the shop until you see the skill you're looking for. This also applies with the Dragon Balls, which are used to unlock breakthrough skills, and these are great because they contain every single skill a character can use in one package. Breakthrough skills are damn essential for making the roster completely competent because they don't make you compromise your limited capsule slots, as you can only use 7 at a time. And for characters that transform, that takes up a lot of slots on their own. This feels incredibly limiting as you don't have a lot of freedom to customize your character to their fullest potential, but knowing what capsules work best with your limited inventory is your best option. Even with the quirks of the capsule system, the combat feels fairly stiff and sluggish. I often find myself trying to perform specific skills only for the inputs to read incorrectly. There is a combo system, yes, but it feels unnatural with how you execute normal moves. There's also the fact that most of the cast feel very similar to each other in terms of normal moves, so there's virtually no difference who you choose aside from transformation skills or special attacks. Oh yeah, transformations are a thing in this game. They require you to unlock and equip to your character like the special move capsules, and you have to have a certain amount of ki to go into it. Transforming increases your basic attack strength by a fixed amount, but it burns through your ki very quickly. And getting knocked down while your ki is lower than the level of the transformation reverts you back to a previous form. Becoming stronger is great, but you can barely use these when you get knocked down, so you have to be extra strategic when using these forms in battle. What's also annoying about transformations is in order to use the strongest ones, you have to also equip the lesser ones alongside it, taking up valuable inventory space. Seriously, look at how much space Goku's Kaioken skills take up. All because I want him to use the Super Saiyan buff. The capsule system is a neat idea in theory, but requires a lot of grinding to see results. It gets better in the next 2 games, but man, it's pretty rough in this one. There's a bunch of modes to play through in Budokai. There's the story mode, local versus, the customization mode, practice, and the world tournament, which you'll probably spend the most time on. This is the only mode in the game that rewards you with zennies to buy capsules from Mr. Popo's shop, and winning the harder difficulty levels earns you more cash to spend. Of course, you have to buy the other difficulty levels in the shop first, but you gotta spend money to earn money, what can you do? But Zenny isn't the only thing you get from winning the tournament. You also unlock the Great Saiyan Man, as well as Hercule, aka Mr. Satan! And you can purchase his own non-canon story mode, The Legend of Hercule. This is a gauntlet of opponents to fight against, and the only character you play as is the World Martial Arts Champion himself, all while externally taunting them and internally shitting his pants. This mode is super hard because Hercule is purposely holding back and handicapping himself, among other reasons. And losing any of these battles makes you start from the beginning. But it's also super charming because it focuses on this lovable goofball the entire time. That alone is worth the price of admission. I love Mr. Satan. And that's pretty much all I got for Dragon Ball Z Budokai. This is an ambitious first attempt at a fighting game for the 6th generation of consoles, but your mileage may vary depending on what you're looking for in a Dragon Ball game. The story mode is great, albeit disjointed at first. Easily the best story mode in the whole trilogy. The music is catchy, the characters you recognize are all here, and the inclusion of the Legend of Hercule is a welcome one. But the gameplay feels extremely dated with its janky combo system, and the fact that you need to grind to make your character's movesets feel complete. I played a lot of this game as a kid, so I'm willing to cut it a bit of leeway, but the fact remains that this is the first game in the trilogy, and it only gets better from this point on. If you want to try Budokai 1, go for it. You might enjoy yourself like I did at points. It's far from perfect, but it's a solid Dragon Ball fighting game. You can find it relatively cheap on the PS2 and possibly the GameCube port. There's also the HD version on the 360 and PlayStation 3, with achievements and a different OST, for obvious reasons. We'll get to Budokai 2 another time, but I want to end this episode by paying tribute to the late and great Akira Toriyama. His recent passing has impacted many people who adore his work, myself included. Dragon Ball is a series I still enjoy a lot, and I can't ignore his contributions to other media either. Dragon Quest and Chrono Trigger wouldn't have been the evergreen classics they are without his masterful art style, and he's created a universe of lovable characters and memorable stories that are still told today. Rest in peace, good sir. Until next time.